Welcome to our continuing series, monthly webinars. We took a break in August, as most of you had noticed. In July, we had quite a big group for our webinar on protection challenges. It was, of course, a topic that was long in the making. P-Hub and HLA came together to do that particular webinar. And today, of course, this is also another important topic that we'll be tackling on customs clearance and export challenges for humanitarian logisticians. This is also a topic that was advocated for by you, and we saw it as a gap that we needed to fill. So we are lucky to have here with us representatives from Impact. I hope that you'll be able to know a bit more about their work in a bit. So for today, the presentation will be made by Virginie Ball. I'll, of course, give her the opportunity to introduce herself in a little while. But just before she does that, so of course, Virginie is a senior advisor in the Emergency Response and Support branch of what most of you know as UN OCHA. You will notice that it says George Farrington, who is, of course, our chief executive at HLA. He's not, of course, facilitating the session. He's away in Paris for an INSEE program. So I am taking over from George and Nicola, who some of you might be familiar with, to run this webinar, and hopefully see you, of course, for the next one. So I'm going to hand over now to Virginie, who is joining us from Geneva. So she will be able to say hi, and then, of course, she would go into the start of the presentation. So over to you now.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all. I can see from the list that some people know me already. So I am Virginie Ball. I work in OCHA, and in particular working on custom facilitation measures, importation of goods, and also another project that some of you probably know on airport efficiency. So we have a series of slides. I will start with a short presentation of OCHA for those that do not necessarily know. The first slide is quickly about OCHA, which was created in 1991 through the resolution 46-182. We are the right-hand arm of the Secretary General, and we bring together humanitarian actors to ensure a coherent response to emergencies. And this resolution assigns a clear leadership and coordination role to OCHA for international assistance to respond to the needs of the affected people. Next slide. We have five core functions. The first one is coordination. So we coordinate humanitarian response, and we improve prioritization and reduce duplication. And we ensure, of course, that assistance reach the people that need it most. We also advocate for forgotten emergencies, and we provide information management services to the humanitarian community. We also mobilize and engage the full range of financing instruments, mechanisms to ensure that humanitarian needs are met. And fifth core function is about policy, and we are developing humanitarian policies such as the high-level policy recommendation that some of you know and are contributing to it on cross-border movement of relief aid. Next.
Yeah.
So this is broadly where we are in the world. So we have headquarters in New York and in Geneva, and we have regional offices in different places of the world with country offices. Next. So the first strategic objective of OCHA is to transform coordination for a more efficient and tailored humanitarian response. Next. For that, first of all, when we discuss with customs administrations, they face dual challenges. First of all, they have to protect their borders, but they also have at the same time to ensure speedy and efficient importation of relief goods during an emergency. And then to implement a tailored humanitarian response in a changing world, we need two things. We need protocols and we need procedures, not only on customs, but also on importation and temporary admission. And at the same time, we also need to raise awareness. Raise awareness to customs administration on their important role during an emergency, and also raise awareness to the humanitarian community and donors of aid on how to use these procedures and what is the impact of not respecting the procedures. The overall objective of this is to minimize the delays in the provision of life-saving assistance. You are all aware that many delays are reported by humanitarian by donors of aid during an emergency. So this preparedness work allows to minimize or reduce the delays, and also minimize cost of humanitarian assistance. Humanitarian organizations pay demurrage costs and cost at customs entry points because there are long processes. It's not quick enough. So while working on all these elements, then we can minimize delays and reduce costs. Next slide. To do that, OCHA, through the Impact Working Group, we do foster a dialogue between donors of aid and customs administrations. And we convene a network of partners to develop a collective approach and tools in support of national coordination mechanisms. So you have in the middle the different stakeholders that are part of it and that are our partners. So IFRC, International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Society. We have ITU on telecommunication equipment. We have UNCTAD that have developed ASICUDA, the automated system for customs data for more than 100 countries in the world. And we have the World Customs Organization. Each of them have a key role to play in the process, and I will come to that a bit later. So with all these actors, we do reach out a series of partners. We have the Global Health Cluster, the Logistic Cluster, telecommunication cluster, mainly for the clusters, but also the private sector. We work with custom brokers. We also work with regional organizations, CDIMA, for example, recently with Dorian, ASEAN, of course with the INGO community, academia, UN agencies, etc. So we advocate for all the work that we are doing. We create and enhance our network. We also provide capacity building support, and we coordinate in time of emergency all the activities that we are done in the preparedness phase. Next. So the roadmap that we have created and that we have developed with all these partners for member states, there are a series of activities. The first one is the ratification of international conventions. This is the highest level. This is the highest level, and all these conventions, such as the revised Kyoto Convention, for example, or the Istanbul Convention on Temporary Admission, the World Customs Organization advocate for the ratification of these conventions. Once these conventions are ratified, or even if they are not ratified, there is a need to amend or to adopt a national legislation. So this is the objective of the IDRL project, International Disaster Response Law Program, that is co-led by OCHA and IFRC, and assist member states to translate and to use legal terms and adopt laws to receive international assistance and to coordinate the arrival of aid. What we do then, the next activity, is to strengthen collaboration and coordination at the national level. What does it mean? It means that we are convening different workshops and meetings with all stakeholders that are involved in the importation of aid in the country. So we do have, of course, the customs administration, but we also have all the other ministries that are involved in the importation of goods. So Ministry of Health, Ministry of Telecommunication, but also, as I have mentioned in my previous slides, custom brokers and the private sector, UN agencies, NGOs, etc., to make sure that we all speak the same language and we understand the challenges of all of us. it's not easy. The customs administration have their own vocabulary and old jargon. We do have ours as the humanitarian community. So we need to make sure that we all understand the role of each of us and to speak the same language. Next slide, please. The next, once we have convened this network of national stakeholders, then we draft, we ask member states to draft and to adopt protocols and standard operating procedures. So this is a key aspect of our work to make sure that before an emergency happens, then the government has drafted and adopted standard operating procedures. So this is crucial to have around the table the Ministry of Health that will explain what procedures they have for the importation of medicines, the same thing for vehicles for other ministries, etc. So that when it happens, we do have clear instructions and clear procedures on what we should do as humanitarian actors to facilitate and to provide assistance to those that are in need. So to do that, we do engage with, of course, the humanitarian community, representative from relevant ministries and all the actors. Writing SOPs is not that straightforward as we think it is. When you ask customs administration to describe the procedures they have, it's very difficult for them to put it in writing. Customs officers at different entry points, they do have different interpretation of the procedures. So it's good to have the legal department, it's good to have practitioners, it's good to have all those that are involved to make sure that the SOPs are the reality and a real reflection of what will happen in the ground if there's an emergency. And they also need to understand that we are not talking about normal times, but we are talking about situations where an overflow of goods are coming into the country, such as in Bahamas, for example, in the last days, and then put in place the procedures. When you have no electricity, when you don't have enough staff, when you don't have enough resources, etc., then it's very difficult to have the normal procedures. So you need to think of a plan B to make sure that goods of the humanitarian community are quickly released from the customs administration. Once we have the SOPs, we recommend to member states to run a simulation exercise. For example, we ask for a pallet to be on the tarmac, and then we look at whether the procedures are really implemented and applicable. So we look at all the persons, and we discuss with all the persons that are supposed to put a stamp on the documents you provide, and see how long it takes. And if there is a bottleneck, then we can come back in a meeting and then amend the SOPs. We also need to train humanitarian actors on the role of customs. We have realized over time that logisticians do not necessarily have the good information or enough knowledge of on the role of customs. Why do they ask for a packing list? Why do they ask for a custom declaration? Why do they ask for that? What are the challenges, and why do we need to work with them and respect the rules? So we have organized several trainings with customs administrations, and we will run others to raise awareness and to understand each other. Who are the humanitarian actors, who are the customs, and then to make sure that if an emergency happens, we know each other and we know why these requirements are made by the government or by us as humanitarian actors. The last point is the continuous engagement. Of course, the SOPs, this is a live document. When national law or protocols are changed, then we need to adjust the SOPs and review them to make sure that if something happens, then we have the right documents that can be immediately activated and applied by all the actors. Next. The next activity that we propose is the coordination and collaboration at the regional level. For example, during the Ebola crisis, there was a need for a strong and robust collaboration between the different countries that were affected by Ebola. So they need to understand the challenges, they need to understand who is coming, who is importing what, and how to speed up and enhance the importation of goods. We also have another actor that was on the list on one of my previous slides, which is UNCTAD. For some of you probably know that UNCTAD, they have developed the ASICUDA system, automated system for customs data, which is the automated system for all customs clearance and all importation that go to the country. We have now an MOU with them, and we have developed a module within ASICUDA. This module is called ASIREC, Automated System for Relief Consignment, and it will prioritize the clearance of the goods that are coming into the country. So if organization A imports teddy bears, as we have seen in previous emergencies, and another organization imports mosquito nets, for example, then the customs official will automatically see on his screen the custom declaration for mosquito nets and will clear it as a priority. All these will be prioritized. The other feature that ASIREC provides is the information about what is in the pipeline. So as soon as they receive a declaration, a custom declaration, then we can receive the information on how many mosquito nets are in the pipeline, and then track all these items into the country for the logistic cluster, for example, when they are requested to move these items into the country, and then we can track all this information as well. Then last but not least, information sharing and data sharing. The ASICUDA system will show where the customs entry points are, how long time you will have to wait at the customs entry point so that you can make a decision and change the entry points that you wanted to use to import your goods. But also it will show all the procedures that are applicable wherever you are in the country. So this is a powerful tool that has not been implemented yet in any country, but we are working on that, and we are raising funds to implement this tool in several countries in the world. Over. Next slide, sorry. Mm-hmm. So all these activities and the roadmap we propose, then if an emergency happens, we activate all these mechanisms and we draw the lessons learned, and then we come back and visit the country to see what should be changed. The international convention, should they be ratified? Should we amend the SOPs? Should we do another simulation exercise, etc., etc.? And then with all this package, we offer a full range of activities and of technical expertise that allows the countries to be better prepared to import, to receive the international assistance when there is a major disaster. Next. So 2 examples to explain what we did during the response to these 2 emergencies and the most recent emergencies. We have Mozambique and Cyclone Idai and Hurricane Dorian. I will give the floor to Margot, who will explain, as she has drawn lessons learned after the emergencies, thanks to response to survey and thanks to our experience. So Margot, do you want to take the floor and explain in a few lines?
Yeah.
Over to you.
Thank you, Virginie. I will briefly talk about the lessons learned from the Cyclone Idai that struck Mozambique in March this year. The first point is that the customs focal point was long to identify, as we had no previous relation with the Mozambique Custom Administration. And the second point is that we created a WhatsApp group after that. The WhatsApp group was a good tool because it facilitated the communication with the customs authorities and also with the humanitarian community. The answers were quick, and also a translation from Portuguese to English and English to Portuguese was provided. Also, this was a good tool because procedures about specific items were provided, such as medical equipment or food.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me give you the latest information on Dorian and what we are doing since the cyclone hits the country. As you know, the cyclone hit the country on the 1st of September. We have immediately identified the focal points, and the Controller General of Customs immediately was in contact with me to discuss the procedures that they will put in place for the importation of goods. So the WhatsApp group, which is something that is now very popular and everyone uses, was a very efficient tool, or is a very efficient tool, because it is still using for this emergency and is available to all of you to share information about the procedures, but also to ask all the questions from the humanitarian community. One of the very first questions was about the importation of fuel, for example, to the country, but there were other questions about the temporary admission of vehicles. So the Controller General of Customs, she has appointed several persons, and they joined the group, and then the answers were directly coming from the Department of Customs of Bahamas. So it was very efficient, very active, a lot of requests, a lot of answers, and then even if we had not SOPs in place in advance, as we had not initiated any discussions with the customs, the Department of Customs of Bahamas, the communication is very smooth and is very quick to provide information immediately on the custom procedures, importation procedures, temporary admission, etc. So all this work that we are doing is efficient, has proved to be useful. I know that some of you are already aware of that and are using all these tools and are part of our discussion. So I think I'm done for my presentation now. If you have any comments or questions, I'll give the floor back to our facilitator. Over to you, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Virginie and Margot, for sharing those insights. I'm sure we've all learned something, but for most of you, this is things that you experience in your day-to-day activities as humanitarian logisticians, so you have many more questions to ask. But just to start us off, Virginie, so do you find that some of these procedures that you have in place do not, in fact, work in certain instances or are not adhered to? And related to that, what are some of the regions or some of the experiences you have from specific locations? It'd be good to get the insights on that. And asking from your experience, if there's been any instances where you find that these protocols and these procedures do not work or are not adhered to in the case of an emergency response, and what are some of the locations, or what are some of the locations where this happen, and what are the reasons why you think these procedures don't work there?
It has always worked if we had initiated discussions with customs administration, because my role as OCHA is to raise awareness to customs administration that they have to play a key role. When I made a presentation recently to a regional meeting of customs administration, I mentioned to her that they are rescuers, because if the goods are stuck at the border, then we cannot save lives. So they are part of this life savings chain and chain of rescuers. So if we have initiated discussions with them, it's very easy to immediately activate the mechanism and then get information from them. If we have not initiated any discussions, such as in Mozambique, it took us a few days to identify the person and to discuss and for them to understand what were our expectations. Because the very first response they give us, oh, no worries, in the law we do exempt donations to the government. So they only talk about taxes and exemption of taxes, etc. But they don't think that we need also the procedures and the list of documents and all the processes. So if we have not initiated any discussions as it was in Mozambique, then it was much more difficult to get the information we need. So this preparedness work is very key, and all the actors that we are working with definitely contribute to that, to make sure we all understand each other and customs administration understand why we need this information, and the humanitarian community understand the role of customs and respect the rules and procedures that we are trying to minimize for if an emergency hits. Over.
Okay, well, thanks for that. So Janine has a question, Janine Miltz, if I got the name right. She is asking about the formation or information regarding the WhatsApp groups. So she wants to know that where does one get to be a member of them? How do you become aware of this WhatsApp group and access to it? She said she's aware of the LOC cluster WhatsApp group that was formed for Mozambique, but she did not know of any one for imports and customs specifically. Is this separate?
Okay, so indeed, the LOC cluster had created a WhatsApp group for Mozambique, but we had created as well a WhatsApp group on customs, and the information was on the situation report of the logistic cluster and also on the virtual OSOC. We do have a mechanism that is called Virtual OSOC, On-Site Coordination Center, and you can ask for a username and a password, and you have all the information. But next time, contact me and I will add you to the WhatsApp group.
Okay.
And if you are involved in the response in Bahamas, I'm happy to share the link to the WhatsApp group as well.
Okay, so Virginie, your presentation or your PowerPoint had quite a lot of information that a lot of people were not able to absorb all within the short time frame, and they want to know if that information will be made available after
the PowerPoint presentation, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Of course, the PowerPoint presentation is available to all, and if we can give my email address, and then I can answer any questions and engage discussions to answer any more questions on a bilateral basis, even if it can benefit all if the questions are raised now. Mm-hmm. I'm happy to continue the discussion on this and to bring more experience to understand the challenges that these organizations face in terms of importation, being medicines or vehicles or telecommunication equipment, etc. And we are happy to work with all. This is our work as OCHA to make sure that everyone is on board and have the right answers and the answers they need to give a better response for the affected people.
Great. So, well, Matthew from Faith in Action Initiative wants to know that prior to a disaster event, what avenues will an NGO or an NPO have to be able to engage with Impact or UN OCHA, so that this work of education and advocacy and communication can be done prior?
Okay, so first of all, when we convene a meeting in the countries, in disaster-prone countries, we do invite all NGOs. So through the resident coordinator or through the WFP office or OCHA office or whatever, we do inform all the agencies and all the humanitarian actors and ask them to join to contribute to the discussion. If we have not organized any workshop, then to engage with Impact is with me, and then we will invite you to join the discussion. And specifically, we have in February the Humanitarian Networks and Partnership Week starting on the 3rd of February, where we'll have a lot of discussions about this topic, technical discussions, but also broader discussion to understand what your needs are and how we can address that and find solutions together. On education, we do have training courses that we had organized last year. We are considering organizing others by the end of the year. The dates are not fixed yet, but then we invite all our network to participate and contribute to the training induction course on customs. So you are more than welcome to join the network, contact me, and then we can continue the discussion and I can share with you the documentation we have on this work that we are doing.
Okay, well, thanks, Virginie. Okay, so Nicola from IMC wants to know that is it in OCHA's scope of discussion with the USG Bureau of Industry and Security for temporary approval to import and use US products in heavily sanctioned countries in case of emergency? I'm assuming they mean places like Iran and the rest. And because US NGOs are cut off from ability to quickly respond to emergency in those countries, if no existing BIS export licenses exist?
The answer is no. Most of the time, these sanctioned countries, this is what we call complex emergencies, and for the time being, we are focusing on natural disasters. The answer to the question is no, but we have more and more requests to deal with that. So if we have resources and enough expertise on that, then we can address this topic. But for the time being, the impact project does not cover this aspect. Over.
Okay, right. So Victor Adebayo wants to know, how does OCHA manage government bureaucracies which could delay approval of IDEC or other import documentation?
Okay, I don't know if Victor is in Nigeria. I suppose so. So we have worked a lot in Nigeria for that. We do consider reconvening meetings with the Customs Administration of Nigeria and the other partners. I will meet with some of them in the next weeks. So I will address again these bottlenecks that we are having with IDEC certificate. So we also have a WhatsApp group for Nigeria specifically, where the Customs Administration is part of it. We must say that the answers are slow, but we do try to find solutions, and we need to reiterate our request for speeding up the approval of IDEC certificate. Over.
Okay. So Kenneth from Nairobi University in Kenya has a question related to information flows during an emergency. And so he wants to know that what do you do if during the humanitarian situation, you're not getting the information you require from the affected region or government? I'm assuming either some kind of information or they're not coming in a timely manner. What are you in a position to do?
Okay, again, it depends whether you are talking about a natural disaster or complex emergency. If it is a natural disaster, we do have a network of partners all over the world that has a very good relationship with the customs administrations. So either the World Customs Organization, either UNCTAD, either IFRC, either OCHA, etc. And we have always found a way to get the information we need. So it may take a bit longer. As I have explained, in Mozambique, it was more difficult because of the language, because of of non-identification of someone who was able to answer, but we always get the information we need. I've never been in a situation during an emergency where I have not received the proper procedures for the importation of goods. Over.
Right. Okay, so I think Victor, who is indeed from Nigeria, is asking if he could be connected to the WhatsApp group in that region. Or
yes,
that
of course, of course. Please contact me, and we'll discuss that, and we'll continue the discussion on Nigeria. Some colleagues have been there, and we need to continue the discussion. And sometimes we have to raise it at the highest level with the UN resident coordinator or other partners. So please contact me.
Okay, so Virginie, what next? For the impact project, do you have any things in the pipeline to, of course, make these procedures and processes even more efficient than I'm sure they already are from some of the examples you've given?
Well, for the next steps, we are strengthening our network with partners, and I do advocate the implementation of custom facilitation measures all over the world. I have been in all the regions this year, and I attended regional meetings of DG of Customs, and I continue this work over the next months. What is important is also to work on the high-level policy recommendations that we have initiated with UNEC. The document has to be finalized by the end of October. It is a document that describes all the procedures that should be put in place by the regulatory bodies and the cross-border agencies in times of emergency. So if the participants want to contribute, for sure, they are more than welcome, and we can invite them to the next call and give them their ideas on what should be done. In terms of training, I think this is something very important, and that we should all be aware of. We are developing these trainings, but we also consider developing e-learning courses. And this is a request from donors because they do give money and funds to humanitarian organizations, and this money is sometimes used partially for demurrage cost or for different cost at entry points, which is not necessarily because of the customs, but a lack of knowledge of the logistician in the country. So we try to improve the knowledge of the custom procedures in different countries. So this is an important point to make and see what the needs are for these organizations, and how we can build this training in a proper way, and something that is very useful for donors of aid wherever they are, being governmental organizations, NGOs, UN agencies, or whatever.
Right. Okay, thanks. Now over to our participants. We would like to, of course, hear from some of you who may be joining us and have been involved in Hurricane Dorian. If you have any experiences to share or any specific questions regarding Dorian, the Dorian response, now is the time to ask, because it's, if there's still opportunity for you to be able to take advantage of all the platforms that Virginie has identified. So please, of course, type in those questions, and we still have got some time to answer them. So I also wanted to note that at HLA, we try to, of course, capture lessons learned from each emergency response, especially in terms of coordination, information flows, the flow of logistics and essential goods and products. And we have done this. Following Cyclone Ida and Kenneth. Of course, that information has been shared on all our platforms. We're hoping to do the same for Hurricane Dorian. For the Hurricane Dorian response, we'll be reaching out to those of you involved, especially the folks over at Impact, to see what worked, what are the lessons learned that can shape future responses. So we'll be coming back to you for some of those insights. And of course, please watch out for our communications platforms, the website, the e-newsletters if you haven't signed up for it already, and then you'll be able to have access to some of these insights. If there are no more questions, I think we can wrap up this webinar. We want to thank the team from Impact, Margot, and of course, Virginie. They've been really organized in the midst, of course, handling or managing a response, like what is happening in the Bahamas. They've been on point in putting together this presentation and ensuring that it happens. So we are very grateful for that. And of course, to all of you for showing the interest in this webinar, for responding to the survey so far, and of course, joining us today. There's also some more questions, so I think we still got time to respond to it. So, well, Nicola again wants to know, he said the exigency letter is valid till 2nd October. And so she wants to know, does this mean all shipments must arrive to the Bahamas by 2nd October or start their journey on that day? And then related to that, we found that medical commodities are already standard procedure exempt from taxation.
I think that this is a good question for the WhatsApp group. And then if Nicola, you want to join the group, and then you will get a reply directly from the Department of Customs. And then the answer will help all the others to get the response, because you are probably not the only one with these questions. And we have asked the questions already to the Department of Customs, but I think it's good that you ask the question on the WhatsApp group for Bahamas, and then engage the discussion with Customs Administration through the group. So it is a perfect example of the type of questions that has to be posted and published on the WhatsApp group. So Nicola, send me an email and I'll invite you to the WhatsApp group and let's continue the discussion there.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So I believe your second question about if you'll be able to import after 2nd October tax-free medical commodities can also be answered on that platform.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay. So now moving on, we have the next in the series for October the 9th. We'll be discussing mapping in emergency response. One of the lessons learned from the response in Mozambique was about the use of maps and how being able to map what is happening in each location, what is required. And we are lucky to have Map Action to lead that really technical discussion on the 9th. If you haven't, please, of course, register for this free webinar and join us for the discussion. And then in November, we will have Geodis and Hapag Lloyd joining us to discuss some new changes to ocean freight, and that is also related to issues around customs and exports. So of course, this will be a continuation of the discussion that we end today. So watch out for that and do register and join us. Thank you very much for your attention, and we hope to see you next time. Bye.